the traditional training for the medicine person was astute insight into body language and how the internal matrix of self mastered, one could then have mastery over things in the outside world. So that the medicine person was trained to be able to be aware of body language and everything that's, you know, occurring. So when somebody, for instance, would bite their bottom lip, for instance, like if I went like that, it's sort of, you know, thought on hold, and somebody raised their eyebrows, well, that's visually, immediately person would become aware that the person is in a having a visual picture more, or a hand might come up to the ear, which is more auditory, and the voice may get more spaced out and deeper, and it's all kinesthetic, and the voice may be picked up and become more visual, and or be more middle range, more auditory. So the medicine person really was trained really astutely in communication more with the other than conscious, and the difference between training of just someone regular and someone in the medicine tradition is that they go through many years of learning about the syntax of behaviour, and their whole training is much more being able to track and be observed to see all of the various metaphors that's happening at the deepest of unconscious experience. So that they would give someone a gift, for instance, you know, and they would say, this has a beautiful clear head. When you saw this, you could see that it certainly does. It's really beautiful, you know, in its clear headness. That this grew very deep inside the mountain, you know, and grew in quite a beautiful dark place, but that yet it's very see-through and crystal clear in itself, and that this stone, which is a beautiful crystal, but we're talking about something on another level, and this is how the medicine people really are doing more of their work. But you're taught how to associate, and what association in English we could say there's various realms of how consciousness is moved or shaped, and so in English what we would translate to in this field would be, for instance, one word they have which translates into being associated more versus dissociated. So when we're associated, we're more moving toward things, and we have things within, and when we're dissociated, we're focused away from and outside. So pronouns like the word this places things inside, and that as a pronoun places things outside. And the medicine person had a very astute awareness of where to associate consciousness, where there might have been dissociatedness, and there needs to be something associated more. And where is somebody so associated that they do need to be dissociated from that, so that they can have more of their mind themselves. So association and dissociation, and becoming aware of this as a medicine person, becoming aware more of congruence and congruent behaviour. The ancient people taught that how could you be aware that behaviour is congruent or not? Congruency is a word which just sort of is about how parallel is the processing of things, that's all. So two people could be both associated and be congruent with each other, but two people could be both dissociated and be congruent with each other. Congruency is simply a parallel processing, which the way that we can tell this is to be able to be determined how any behaviour that immediately preceded this is supportive of this which is happening now, and what is it that is of occurredness as time passes into the future, which also is supportive of this moment. Then we could say this moment behaviourally more is congruent. So congruency, being congruent in behaviour, is more like a parallel processing. If somebody said that you don't understand, well, they would say, yes, you do. These are sequential incongruencies, and simultaneous incongruencies happening at the same time. Sequential incongruency would be more, oh, I really am not going to go and get that, or I am going to go and get that. So they are sequential incongruencies. So the medicine person was very astutely trained in how to observe behaviour and know what was going on more deeply inside. Their way to communicate to each other was far more through body language and things than what most people are taught. We're taught sort of more didactic sorts of processes, which is sort of thinking, where much of the learning that the medicine person perceives is something more experiential based, and a great learning is happening on this level because you're engaging the whole person in a way. And so, you know, one had to become aware of as somebody is integrated. That's a different word again, and describing another state. Integratedness is occurred, of course, as congruency is, and typically as people are a bit more associated in life rather than dissociated. And integration is where interest and pleasure are engaged or involved, because as interest and pleasure are engaged, we have access to the frontal cortex, and we have access to our executive guidance area. From having gone through various altered states and having learned much about all of this, the medicine person really became astutely aware of areas of ourself which, for instance, our executive guidance area, most people will pass through this, of course, as they're passing through from sort of some chaos within themselves back into orderliness, or from internally having travelled somewhere incredibly back into this sort of like reality of our universal illusion, which is what we agree to, which is something which is made up inside, which we should stick with the things which is more universal as we can, but the medicine person had a medicine bag, and as the brain of the bag was worn out, it was indicated that person was sort of available for all manner of external communicativeness and communion, but when the bag was turned in, it was actually like a moment of travelling further deeper in to be retrieved of something. And grief is loss, and it's the integration of loss, and the things which cause us to feel our union with each other is much more where we can feel a common fate. We can feel a union, and also through celebration we also feel union, but having compassion is sort of meeting people where they are and being able to find a way to celebrate, and that celebration makes this compassion. It's the chief component of compassion, actually. So integration in behaviour is where interest and pleasure exist. As this state exists, we've got more whole brain functioning occurring. So there you go. Here's a few words. We've talked about associated behaviour, dissociated behaviour. we've talked about congruency and incongruency. We mentioned types of incongruency, which is a simultaneous incongruency where two things that are opposite are occurring in the behaviour, or sequential incongruency where something is not supportive of another. And then we went on to talk a little bit about what integration is, and integration occurs in our state more as a result of a feeling of interest and pleasure. Anyway, I hope you're having a wonderful day as you're listening to this, and look forward for us to catch up with each other.